I think a lot of game devs find themselves in the same situation I'm in, bouncing between one project to the next, always chasing something new and exciting. Sure, it's great to experiment and learn, to feel that exciting dopamine rush when you start something new. But it's only now, after a solid 6 years of prototyping, sitting through CS lectures, watching GDC talks, and consuming other people's devlogs, that I realize I have no completed projects under my belt. And, to boot, I'm in dire need of something resembling a job. With the game dev job market looking not so bright, as soon as I'm about to graduate, of course, my outlook has never been worse. However, rather than wallow in sadness and beat myself up over it, I'm strapping myself in for the wild ride of shipping my first game. From my years of listening to other game devs, I've come to a few conclusions. First, you need to love the idea of your game. If you're not fully invested in your game, why should anyone else be? You need to believe in your game and enjoy it. Enjoying it being the hard part, as you'll have to build it from the ground up and play it thousands of times. Second, you need a game that stands out, whether it be the art, the premise, or your game loop. It needs to be something that catches people's attention and retains it, which is harder than ever considering last year over 14,000 Steam games were released. With all this in mind, I decided to combine the two genres I enjoy the most, 4X and RPGs. My goal is to take the little pieces from my favorite games to create something fresh and exciting. If you know anything about these two genres, you'll know the work needed to make them, and making them fun to play, is likely to be immense, especially as a solo dev. I, however, am not one to back down from a challenge, and oh my lord, how this project has already taken a piece of my soul with it. Here's the general premise for the game. You'll choose from a selection of different leaders or chassis, speccing them out to your intended playstyle, to then mix and match them with various cultures to rule over. You'll take your leader and culture into a procedurally generated world to explore and expand, discovering unique landmarks, uncovering interesting resources, advancing through your culture's tech tree, and researching different spells to cast, all while building up cities and armies to fend off other leaders and the various events that occur in the world you inhabit. I want to emphasize the player's ability to forge their story, something I believe many 4X games try to do but end up falling just a little bit short of. The usual suspects often promise the player agency to craft their own empire, but in the end, most decisions end up changing a few numbers on your screen or what victory you'll go for, rather than having a lasting impact on the story of your supposed great empire. I believe the mixing of leaders and cultures along with different culture trees for each one, as well as various events of varying impact, are something that will help achieve this goal of improved player agency and story crafting in the game, as well as the genre as a whole. If this sounds like a lot of work, yes it is. Now that you've listened to me yap, I guess it's time to start getting into that juicy game dev stuff that you actually came here for. Over the course of the past 2 months, and many restless nights, I've been laying the foundation for the complex systems needed to make my game a reality. I first began working on the procedural generation of the worlds the player will explore. I chose a 2D square grid solution because it was what I was most comfortable with, and through using a combination of Perlin noise, rule tiles, and the power of Unity's addressables, this is what I've got so far. I've spent quite a while planning on how I want to go about generating the worlds, as I wanted something a bit more interesting than just creating a few different biomes. After a lot of thought, I settled on having these initial biomes for now, with plans for possibly more. Each tile that you see has 5 possible yields: food, production, gold, culture, and arcane knowledge. These yields are affected by the tile's biome, among other things, such as traits and buildings. Currently, the only traits I've got in the game are hills and mountains, with them working a lot like how they do in Civ, improving production while reducing the food yield. As for buildings, I currently only have cities and these gold chests that grant money when interacted with by units. Speaking of units, I've yet to introduce them. For the first culture in the game, I decided to go with a race of half-dragons who have lost the once great power and flames of their ancestors, and are now on a mission to reclaim them. The name I've given them for the moment is the Eodrogas. Eodrogas. I started with creating their settler, the Eodrogas priest, who has the ability to settle their cities, but is fairly weak. I've got a few other ideas for cultures, leaders, and units laying around, but for now, I'm working with a lot of placeholder art and ideas just to get the complex systems up and running. As for the movement of the units and the majority of the actions you'll do in the game, I've decided to take a different approach than what is usually seen. Each turn, you'll make various decisions or actions for your empire, and then after ending your turn, you'll see them play out, with a certain order to them, such as spellcasting first, then units moving, and battles occurring, and so on. This is so if I ever get around to making multiplayer for the game, it'll be a lot easier to code and to understand from my brain. The end goal will be to allow for hot seat games and regular multiplayer games, as I find these games are much more fun with friends. That is, if you have any. Now I know I mentioned battles, but at the moment it's in a pretty rough spot, like most of the game to be honest. For now, battles aren't really controlled by the player. Rather, the units can be given a formation in order to do certain actions before a battle occurs, such as holding their ground or flanking. The player then can choose to watch battles or just see the outcome. It's similar to what the Dominion series has in place for battles. Whew, that was a lot of stuff said very quickly. It may seem like I'm all over the place, and that's because I am. Because at this stage, there's a lot, and I mean a lot, that is subject to change while I get it all working to make the first cohesive playable demo. And I thought it would be better just to get all my thoughts out there to generate some interest on the project. If you are at all intrigued by my ideas, have some of your own, or want to support the project, don't hesitate to contact me. I'd love to talk about the game because everyone else around me is getting tired of hearing about it. If you got this far in the video, here's a cookie. Thanks for watching.